Well, hello and welcome to the book launch of the new Leadership Playbook. I'm Andrew Bryant, and of course I'm going to be talking about this new book, my fourth, which went live today, available on Amazon stores. And of course I'm going to talk about that. Yep, I'm a speaker, trainer, coach, and author, and I have been doing that for a number of years. And so what I know is that really, although I want you to buy the book, there's only a reason for you to buy the book if you know that it will solve a problem for you. Now, I started my career, some of you might know, as a physiotherapist. I went to an English grammar school, I was pretty good at sciences, I was going to be a doctor until they merged my boys' grammar school with the girls' high school just before my A-levels, and I guess I got distracted. And I got enough grades to do physiotherapy, and one of the mantras that we were taught is that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. And so any book, any consultant is going to have an idea what they want to do for you. So when I say, buy my book, that means that I know what your problem is. And of course, I don't. What I do know, however, in my work over 20 years working with senior executives and executive leadership teams and organizations and their culture, is that right now we have an unprecedented time. We've just been through over 2 years of a pandemic that has transformed the way we work, that we've accelerated the rate of digitization, and we've increased the level of autonomy of people. And so we need a new playbook to handle these challenges. This quote from a chief people officer from one of my clients, Rogers, is a company out of Mauritius. And this is Manish, and here's what he says. Our world is evolving at an increasingly fast pace. Organizations are facing higher levels of disruption, uncertainty, and volatility in their environments. Teams and individuals alike are having to develop greater agility, resilience, and collaboration to succeed. The next normal requires a revised playbook for leaders to grow, perform, and thrive. So, do you agree with Manish? Do you have your own challenge that you need to face, either as a leader or as perhaps a chief people officer or a human resource professional or a C-level executive for your organization? Do you have a problem to solve? Now, Mel Druth is a chief people officer for a company called Planful Inc. out of San Francisco, Silicon Valley. And she had a problem to solve. You see, I had worked with Mel and her organization working with the senior leaders. I was the coach to Grant Halloran, the CEO. And Mel had seen the transformation that I did with the senior leadership team and said, I need a playbook for the managers, for the frontline new managers, so that links with our culture, the Planful way. And we need them to manage consistently, to have a framework and principles in place. Now, I had, over my 20 plus years of working, trained many managers, and I had the training materials, and I was prepared to take on the challenge of updating that for the new environment. I created 6 workshops for Planful, and I delivered a framework that they could build into their culture piece. But with Mel's help and the CEO of Planful Inc., I took that material and I said, look, I'm going to hold on to the IP because I want to create a larger book. I want to create a full leadership book that will allow people to get this information. And they were absolutely okay. So question, hi Ashley, yes, the book will be available via Audible. I just got to record it. I wanted to get this one out. So give me 2 to 3 months. Let's go for 2 and we'll get this out on Audible. So back to the challenge. So Grant and Mel got what they needed. They needed a framework for their managers. I went to my other clients and asked them what needs to happen. You see, after the Planful way, I wanted to create a book that everybody could use. Now, actually, I've been asked over many years, I've written, as I said, a number of books And people often ask me, what's the best leadership book? And it's a great question. And it really depends on where somebody is on their journey. Am I going to recommend Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, something by the management guru Drucker? There are a number of great books. And hello from Fredericksburg, Virginia, LinkedIn user. It doesn't show your name, whoever that is. So please just type your name. So when I was thinking about, well, now I'm going to write a new book, am I going to write the best leadership book? Well, that would be a tad arrogant, wouldn't it? Because best is always compared to what? But I did want to write a good book. And so I had some questions for myself. If I was going to write a new book, which this one became, I wanted it to be practical. I wanted it to be personal, and with personal, read human, and I wanted it to be principle-driven. Now, why principle-driven? Because when I wrote my 2012 book on self-leadership with Dr. Anna Kazan, which I like to call the Red Book, we looked at leadership at that time, and a lot of the leadership texts, and certainly now with social media, the list of leadership traits, leaders must do this, leaders must be like this, and the list got longer and longer and longer, and was quite intimidating. And the reality is that leadership is contextual, isn't it? The type of leadership depends on the environment and the type of people that you are needing to lead. So instead of having a list of traits, we need principles that guide people to make their own decisions. So that was my intent when I wrote the book. I wanted to base it on the work that I'd done with my clients. Many of my clients represented here. They've all written, everybody whose face is here has written me a LinkedIn recommendation or testimonial, I'm never sure what it's quite called. And I wanted to take their stories on their transformation, their journey, the challenges they faced, and include it in this book. And so that's what I did. So I'll talk a bit about the book in a moment, but before, let's just do a little diagnostic about where you are. Because the subtitle of the book, The New Leadership Playbook, and by the way, you can find everything you need to know about it on thenewleadershipplaybook.com. The subtitle is Being Human Whilst Delivering Accelerated Results, or, whilst. I said whilst because I'm English. And so accelerated results is what you need to have. Because let's face it, if you're a manager or a leader and you don't deliver results, you have a limited career trajectory. So where are you on an accelerator? So I'm using the analogy of a speedometer here. I live in Portugal now. I'm English by birth, Australian by passport, lived 18 years in Asia, now living in Portugal. And there's a road from Lisbon down to the Algarve, and you can go very, very fast on that. If you're in Germany, you can go very fast on an autobahn. So you know that acceleration is possible. So let's just start, where are you? And I think everybody starts at the bottom. And where's that? Well, we're born, aren't we? And when we're born, we come into this world, our mother brings us into the world, and the interesting thing happens. Within a few moments of our birth, we're given a name, a nationality, an ethnicity, a gender, and possibly a religion and a football team to follow. You see, we've been framed. And a lot of psychologists, philosophers are considering that we really don't have as much free will as we think we have. We are a product of the algorithm of our DNA and our upbringing. And so it's not unusual to be framed, but being framed is very limiting. You see, to be human means to be humble. And humility is having an accurate, neither overestimated nor underestimated view of your own ability, and the ability to consider other people's perspectives as equally valid as your own. You see, if you are framed, you are going to suffer with black and white thinking, fixed mindset. You're going to be reactive. You're going to be blaming, or you're going to be trying to lead and manage people who have fixed mindsets. Now, it's interesting, framed people can actually make it into a leadership position, but they will only ever lead people with a similar worldview. They are unable to bring in and collaborate people of different views. So how do you get out of being framed? Well, actually, let me go back a slide. How do you get out of frame? The simplest way is to travel or get an education. It gets you to see that there are different ways of thinking. But that's not enough, because as you can see here, the next stage in the accelerator is firefighting. We leave university or technical college, or we go to work, and before we know it, we are fighting fires. We're running into burning buildings, going from crisis to crisis. And of course, during the pandemic, that was pretty much every day, wasn't it? Putting out the fires. Now, the interesting thing about managing through this, and some people just love this kind of adrenaline rush, the interesting thing is that the only way to get through this and develop and increase is actually to work on yourself, not to work on others. Because if you're just going from crisis to crisis, following procedures, executing instructions, you can't get any momentum. You will hit a bandwidth. You won't be able to go any further. That's it. So, what's the secret? The secret is that you can't lead others unless you first lead yourself. You need self-leadership. Before you can accelerate your results, you have to get in touch with your humanity, with your humility, your ability to consider other people's perspectives as equally valid as your own, your ability to know what your strengths and your weaknesses are and develop those. So self-leadership is the practice of intentionally influencing your thinking, feeling, and actions towards your objectives. You see, with self-leadership, you can really start to move because you've transcended your framing. You can see different perspectives. You can connect with people from different backgrounds. And when challenges are thrown at you, like we've just been through in the last couple of years, you can accept that. You can say, well, this is the new reality. You can adjust your behavior, and then you can accelerate towards results. So the key here is actually being human again. In an age of AI, robotics, machine learning, actually the skill set that we all desperately need. Yes, we need digital fluency, but we need to get in touch with our self-leadership, with our ability to be human. You see, when you do that, you get self-awareness, you get ownership, you become the driver of your own life, and you're able to accept, adjust, and advance. So, although this new book, the new Leadership Playbook, is different from my self-leadership material, the methodology flows through. This is, you go from leading self to leading others, because you can't lead others effectively unless you can first lead yourself. I hope you agree with me on that one. So here's the quote, that leadership in the new workplace needs to be human whilst delivering accelerated results. So, accelerated results. We've been framed. We go through a phase of firefighting. We develop self-leadership. How do we get these accelerated results and maintain our humanity? That is the challenge that I took on in writing and delivering this book. And as you watch this or look at this particular model, you kind of know where you're at, and you know what your challenge is with the people that you're leading. Where are they at, and how do we move them forwards? So the new Leadership Playbook is driven by principles. And there are 7 principles. And those principles inform a framework. And that framework is clear expectations, times mindset and motivation, times right behavior, leads to, and my head's in the way here, accelerated results. So you can use this as a diagnostic. If you're not getting the results that you want, look in the mirror. Have you set clear expectations? Look at your people. Do they have the right mindset and buy-in? Are they motivated? And you have to understand motivation, and I do a deep dive on what is motivation in the book. And looking at right behaviors. Interestingly, so many managers cannot articulate the behaviors that they're looking for. I want you to do better. But what does better look like, sound like, feel like? How will I know that I'm doing better? And the ability to articulate that is very important. So in the book, as I said, there are 7 principles, and those will then inform the plays. And here are the principles. Self-leadership comes first. Leaders are learners. We need to move beyond our framing. We need to embrace our self-leadership, accept, adjust, and advance. Progress over perfection. Perfection kills progress, said Winston Churchill. Disagree and commit. You need to have a voice. You need to be able to speak up. Right? But once you've had the disagreement, once the team is moving forwards, you have to commit to the outcome. Executive presence is so important, having that voice. So executive presence is the ability to project confidence, gravitas, and poise under pressure. And a lot of the coaching I do with executives is to get them to step up both their executive presence and their influence capital. Build the team. You cannot lead unless you can build a team. And diversity matters. Having different ideas, different perspectives, different skill sets is essential to an agile team. And to do that, you're going to have a psychologically safe workspace. So all of that addressed in the book. And from that comes the plays. And here we have, you'll recognize this if you've been on Netflix lately, this is from the Queen's Gambit. I love playing chess. In fact, my chess buddy is watching me do this LinkedIn Live. And in chess, you have a series of lines. So you know there's a certain series of moves that you can do for an opening, and you have some series of moves that you can use potentially for the end game. In sport, like American football, it plays a series of set moves. In this book, the New Leadership Playbook, and if you want to know where to get it, it is the newleadershipplaybook.com. It contains 12 plays, and most of the plays are essentially conversations. Conversations that managers, leaders are having regularly with their people, like the feedback conversation, like the performance management conversation, like the career conversation. In fact, let me give you a list of the plays. Number one, the why. Simon Sinek will be very happy. Start with why. If you don't know who Simon Sinek is, his YouTube on Start With Why was one of the most watched YouTubes, I think, or TEDx's. So the why, ownership, feedback I've spoken about already, objective setting, confidence, collaboration, career conversations, being decisive. If you don't know how to make decisions, you will not be effective. You cannot accelerate your results. Talent and strengths, crucial conversations, culture, and lastly, but not least, coaching, because you need to incorporate all of the others for the coaching conversation. And then that puts it all together, and this is the cover of the book, this little diagram, which I originally drew by hand, but I got an artist to clean up my 3-year-old looking sketch. But really, we're dealing with human beings. And human beings are principle-driven. They're looking towards an objective, but they need that there's a gap. They need to close that gap between their current performance and the objective. And for that, we need feedback and or feed forward. And so we need to be able to handle that. So that really is what the book is about. How do we do that? And on the surface, this is essentially quite simple. And yet many managers struggle with it. The principle of ownership, which is just so obvious. We want people to have autonomy and responsibility, and yet we put policies and procedures which treat people like children. But children get this. I was playing Minecraft online with my daughter, who's 16 now. During the pandemic, we were separated, and so we stayed connected by playing Minecraft, an online game. You may have heard of it. And I'm playing it with her, and I'm a noob. She's the expert. And I said, hey, Tasha, help me enchant this armor. And she said, well, I could, but then you wouldn't learn anything. And so here we are, my 16-year-old daughter teaching me about ownership and responsibility. I was a super proud dad at that moment, but my armor took a while to get enchanted. But there you go, another story. So, is this important? Well, yeah, it is. And let me just get myself out of the way of this for the moment. You see, in 2021, McKinsey looked at the mindsets, the behaviors, the skills that are required for the new workplace. And they came up with 56 deltas. They're called deltas because it's 56 things, and some of them are behaviors, some of them are mindsets. And they divided these 56 into 4 quadrants. Now, I've put this in the book with an explanation and an interview with some people that did the original research. But here's what's interesting. 25% of what's needed for the future of work is self-leadership, being human. And then the rest, cognitive and interpersonal skills, are the conversations in the plays that I've addressed in this book. And 25% is digital fluency. That I don't cover in the book, can't cover everything. I'm not an expert on digital fluency, and yet here we are being digital in this sense, communicating digitally. So this book is for now. It is right now that we need these skills. And I've wanted to create a book that you could read for yourself. And if you're running a team, get everybody on the team to read the book, discuss that. It's full of reflections and challenges. In fact, along with the book, I have included barcodes which will take you to a website where you log in, and I've put extra stuff. I've put a learning diary, so instead of writing in the book, you can write in the learning diary your reflections or your considerations for the challenges so that you can go along with that. And I've added for you an extra value, a download of my 2016 book on self-leadership to make sure that you're up to speed. So there's a PDF of that included in the book. So there's everything that you need in here. And hi, Amelia from Ireland. Great to see that mention that diversity matters. Yes, if people don't get that, I really don't know what planet they're living on. So there's some great diversity stories in here. I really want to make sure that it's not just diversity of gender, but diversity of mindset is really, really important. So this is the new Leadership Playbook. I hope that you want to get a copy. I hope you want to get multiple copies. If you want multiple copies, come to the newleadershipplaybook.com. There's some bundles. If you want a copy for yourself or a Kindle, go to Amazon. It's available now. Please, if you like it, write me a recommendation on Amazon. It helps my indexing for that. So that is basically the launch. That is me rabbiting on about why I think you should buy my book. You should buy my book if it is a solution to some problems you have. If you've faced people that are framed with black and white thinking, if you're dealing with firefighting, running in and out of buildings without the ability to step back and consider how we could stop the fires happening in the first place. If you want some practical plays to take your self-leadership into leading others, and if you are interested in accelerating results, that is absolutely why I wrote this. I've made it simple to read. I've filled it with stories, made it personal, but every one of these plays has been tested in real companies and with real people and made real changes. It's 20 plus years of work that I've put into this, and I just wanted to make it usable. There's no point having a book that nobody reads or uses. And so those were my intention. And is the book appropriate for all kinds of organizations or mainly corporate focused? That is a great question from Carolyn. Look, there's some stories in the book about the most important work that I think I've ever done. And let me tell you that story. So Carolyn, I appreciate you sending this. So about 6 years ago, I got a phone call from a global bank and they said, Andrew, we're interested in interviewing you and doing some leadership work for us. And I was excited because that's what pays the bills. I went in for the meeting and they said, it's a little bit different. And I said, okay, different how? And they said, well, we have partnered with a charity and we're doing an outreach for at-risk and disadvantaged teenagers. We're using our managers as mentors to these kids, and we need somebody to facilitate the program. The people we've been using are kind of outward bound guys, and they're not connecting with these kids. And we thought your leadership methodology, your self-leadership methodology, would help these teenagers. And I said, okay. Now, I have to admit, at the time, I thought this would get me in good graces for the senior leadership work that I was going to do. But I went in to work with the teenagers, and I had a rapid learning curve. I needed to shorten my stories. I needed to make the learning much more fun. By the way, this is called a playbook, not a workbook, right? So I needed to make it a lot more fun, a lot more game-orientated. And it was amazing to see teaching these kids that they were valuable, helping them with their self-esteem, their self-confidence, helping them to project that confidence and prepare them for job interviews was transformational. But what was so interesting was the impact it had on the mentors. As I showed them how to coach the teenagers, they became better managers. And in fact, the next year, the bank said, would you do this again? I said, look, I'm really busy. And they said, we will pay your full fee. And I said, well, I'm kind of less busy. But I said, I'm curious, why? And they said, well, we get a CSR credit for doing this work, but most importantly, every manager that volunteered for your program has subsequently been promoted because they're a better manager. Now, Carolyn, I think this answers your question. If teenagers can use the material that I'm teaching you in this book, and these are disadvantaged and at-risk teenagers, some of these as well, then yes, I would say it's for every organization. Have I tested it with every type of organization? No, I haven't, but it is principle-driven and everything I've done is backed in science. So I hope that answers your question, and if I know what kind of organization that you're talking about, I may be able to speak more specifically to that. So again, tootle over to the newleadershipplaybook.com or just type New Leadership Playbook into Amazon. Make sure you see the black cover with the orange writing, because that's the one. Choose the Kindle or the paperback book and download. Being an effective leader or manager in a post-pandemic world goes beyond being good at what you do. It requires balancing empathy with accountability. The New Leadership Playbook provides a practical guide to being human and understanding people while simultaneously driving for and delivering accelerated results. It does this by sharing principles that work and plays to achieve success. Written for the new or seasoned manager by Andrew Bryant, author, coach, and C-suite advisor who has worked with some of the best leaders and teams. This is a book that you will not only read more than once, you will want each of your team to read and apply the tools within it.